I wrote from when I was 14 till I was 41.
Okay.
And I wrote, for myself. I wrote just to dump out whatever I was feeling because we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have...
During the late 1980s, Dirty Dancing lit up the screen with electric chemistry, unforgettable music, and heart-pounding dance scenes. It became a global phenomenon, making Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze household names. But while the world saw sparks fly on camera, behind the scenes there were a lot of tensions, especially during the filming of the now iconic Hungry Eyes montage. Nobody knew that Jennifer Grey was hiding something that would only come to light years later. It was a truth that, once revealed, painted a very different picture of what really happened on set. A bad one. Red Dawn Before Baby and Johnny dance into movie history. There was Red Dawn, a film whose behind-the-scenes friction set the tone for everything that was about to unfold. When Jennifer Grey learned that Patrick Swayze had been cast alongside her in Dirty Dancing, her heart reportedly sank. Their history wasn't one of warm camaraderie or playful banter. Instead, it stretched back to a different movie entirely, Red Dawn, and it was far from ideal. Released in 1984, Red Dawn was a Cold War era action film about a group of high school students who become guerrilla fighters after the Soviet Union invades the United States. The movie was intense, dramatic, and physically demanding. Behind the scenes, however, it was also a boiling pot of egos and energy. Patrick Swayze played Jet Eckert, a tough, take-charge character who mirrors much of Swayze's own personality at the time. Jennifer Grey had a smaller role as Tony Mason, one of the young fighters. While the cast bonded over their grueling shooting schedule in New Mexico, not everyone walked away friends. Swayze was a trained dancer and former gymnast, and he was known for taking his work very seriously. He threw himself into his role with laser focus and military-like discipline, but his intensity often came off as overbearing. He reportedly had a habit of staying in character between takes, even when the cameras weren't rolling. This method approach worked well for action scenes, but it made it hard for others to relax or feel comfortable around him. Jennifer Grey, on the other hand, was more spontaneous and emotionally open. She leaned into her instincts and had a softer, more free-flowing approach to acting. During Red Dawn, she found Swayze's behavior to be too aggressive, too macho, and sometimes even intimidating. He loved playing pranks and making jokes, while she felt many of them went too far. At one point during filming, Jennifer Grey expressed frustration about how Swayze would mess around during serious moments, making it hard for her to stay in the right emotional space. Their working styles clashed, and so did their personalities. Jennifer Grey later admitted that she found him charming in bursts, but difficult to work with overall. She described him as macho and a bit of show-off, someone who had to be in control of every scene. For her, working with Swayze meant walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what mood he'd be in or whether he'd take her seriously. After Red Dawn wrapped, she hoped they'd never work together again. Little did she know what was coming next. Casting Ice and Fire. When the casting team for Dirty Dancing began the search for their leads, they faced a daunting challenge. The chemistry between Baby and Johnny needed to be electric, believable, and deeply emotional. They needed fire and vulnerability, tension and connection. Jennifer Grey had already been chosen for the role of Frances Baby Houseman, but finding her Johnny proved much harder. Then Patrick Swayze's name came up. He had the right look, charisma, and most importantly, dance training. But he also had a history with Jennifer Grey, and it wasn't good. The memory of their friction during Red Dawn lingered for Jennifer Grey. So when his name came up for the male lead in Dirty Dancing, Jennifer Grey was instantly uncomfortable. She told the casting team that she was not sure about doing another project with him. But the producers were desperate for a male lead with charm, masculinity, and real dance experience. They believed Swayze was the only actor who could physically and emotionally match the role of Johnny Castle, and decided to invite him to the castings nonetheless. Then things took an unexpected turn just before their screen. Test together, Swayze pulled her aside. He looked her in the eye and apologized. In her own words, Jennifer Grey recalled, he said, I love you, and I'm so sorry, and I know you don't want to do the movie." His voice cracked and tears welled up in his eyes. Jennifer Grey's guard was still up, but in that moment she saw something different in him. He wasn't the overbearing show-off actor she remembered from Red Dawn. He was vulnerable. We could kill it. We could kill it if we did this, he told her. That single moment changed everything. Against her better judgment, Jennifer Grey agreed to do a screen test with him. What happened during that test changed everything. They walked into the screen test, and something magical happened. The tension they once had melted into intensity. Their energy was electric. Producers were stunned. That undeniable chemistry wasn't faked, but real. Jennifer Grey's sweet awkwardness and Swayze's strong presence clashed and danced in a way that felt raw and alive. The roles were theirs. Their chemistry was undeniable, even electric, but the tension that brewed years earlier on Red Dawn hadn't gone away. It had only been buried, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And once they began filming Dirty Dancing, all the unresolved friction would come rushing back. Before it became magic, it was a battlefield. The road ahead wasn't smooth. Production moved to Lake Lure, North Carolina, where filming conditions quickly pushed everyone to the edge. The weather was humid, muggy, and stifling. The budget was tight, and time was limited. Cast and crew often worked long hours in uncomfortable heat, with very little room for error. Sets were bare bones, costumes were reused, and locations sometimes barely held together. Even Swayze injured his knee during filming, and the shooting schedule was constantly adjusted to work around his recovery. Jennifer Grey was still uncertain about Swayze's unpredictability, and thus she had to navigate both the pressure of the lead role and the emotional weight of her past experiences with him. And yet, in the middle of all that discomfort, a story about love, class, and rebellion started to take shape. But the real drama, though, wasn't just on screen, it was building behind the scenes. And what happened off camera during Dirty Dancing would be as unforgettable as what audiences saw in theaters. Behind the scenes of Dirty Dancing, once filming for Dirty Dancing officially began, the moment of unity between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze started to fade. The emotional apology and chemistry of the screen test were real, but they didn't erase the clashing personalities that had already burned bridges years earlier. On set, the divide between Jennifer Grey's tender, intuitive approach and Swayze's trained, perfectionist style quickly resurfaced. As the camera rolled, so did the tension. Patrick Swayze had years of dance training under his belt. He was a classically trained ballet dancer and had performed professionally before switching to acting. Jennifer Grey, by contrast, had no formal dance background. She was passionate, expressive, and emotionally connected to her role, but she often struggled with choreography and rhythm. This difference became a frequent source of frustration, not only for her but for Patrick Swayze as well. Scene after scene had to be reshot, sometimes dozens of times, because Jennifer Grey couldn't hold her composure. She'd break into nervous laughter mid-take, or struggle to keep up with the rhythm of the choreography. As a disciplined and serious performer, Patrick Swayze had little patience for such hiccups. The pressure of a tight filming schedule didn't help. According to crew members, some scenes would begin with them barely speaking, glaring at each other just moments before cameras rolled. But then, once action was called, they'd fall into their roles, their anger and awkwardness fueling the romantic tension the audience would later fall in love with. This wasn't just a case of creative differences. Jennifer Grey sometimes felt Patrick Swayze's approach cross a line from passionate to overbearing. In dance rehearsals, he often took charge, corrected her form, or trying to steer her performance in ways that left her feeling undermined or belittled. Jennifer Grey was an actress who worked from instinct. Patrick Swayze was a dancer who lived by precision. That difference created a clash not just of methods, but of egos. Crew members reportedly had to separate them between takes at times. And though Swayze was respected for his skill and drive, some felt he came off too controlling in how he handled Grey. Behind closed doors, Grey sometimes expressed frustration and discomfort, saying she felt overshadowed by Swayze's dominant presence. She didn't want to be a puppet dancing to his lead. She wanted to be a partner in the performance. Ironically, this very tension became the fuel for the film's raw emotional power. When Baby looks nervous or tense around Johnny, it wasn't just acting. Much of what audiences saw on screen came from real, unscripted emotional energy between the two leads. And yet there was one scene in particular where all that friction, the missteps, the mistrust, and the strain seemed to explode into something unforgettable. It became the most iconic moment in the film, and it was one of the hardest to shoot, the lift scene. The lift scene in Dirty Dancing is one of the most iconic moments in cinematic history. It's been recreated, parodied, and admired for decades. But few people know how much emotional tension and real fear surrounded that moment behind scenes. The scene required Jennifer Grey to sprint into Patrick Swayze's arms as he hoisted her into the air over his head. This was a move that demanded perfect timing, strength, and, most importantly, trust. But trust was in short supply at that point in the shoot. Jennifer Grey had never performed a lift before, and what's more surprising is that she refused to rehearse it. She was terrified. Despite being an actress with plenty of experience, Jennifer Grey had a deep fear of being dropped or injured. Swayze, with his dancer's mindset and perfectionism, found this incredibly frustrating. He believed in repetition and preparation, while Jennifer Grey was relying on adrenaline and instinct to carry her through. The filming conditions added to the pressure of the scene. Unlike the earlier lift rehearsed repeatedly in the freezing lake, the iconic final lift during their climactic dance was done indoors. Yet it was even more nerve-wracking because it had to be perfect. Earlier rehearsals for other dance scenes hinted at the pressure leading up to this moment. One particularly well-known scene, where Johnny runs his hand down Baby's arm, and she bursts out laughing, wasn't scripted that way. Jennifer Grey kept giggling uncontrollably during take after take, so much that Swayze became livid. He couldn't understand why she couldn't hold it together. Director Emil Ardolino encouraged the cast to improvise and often kept the cameras rolling even if actors and actresses went off script. One example of this was the scene where Grey was to stand in front of Swayze with her back to him and put her arm up behind his head while he trailed his fingers down her arm, similar to the pose seen in the movie poster. Though it was written as a serious and tender moment, Jennifer Grey was exhausted and found the move ticklish and could not stop giggling each time Swayze tried it, no matter how many takes Ardolino asked for. Swayze was impatient to finish the scene and found Grey's behavior annoying. However, the producers decided the scene worked as it was and put it into film, complete with Jennifer Grey's giggling and Swayze's annoyed expression. The filmmakers saw something real in that moment, something raw and electric, and chose to keep it in the film. Despite all this chaos, when it came time to film the iconic final lift, they did it in one take without any rehearsal. It was just pure tension and adrenaline, and somehow it worked. The shot became the emotional climax of the movie, and a scene audiences have adored ever since. However, the tension and issues between them had been building throughout filming. Earlier, during the shooting of one of the more intimate scenes, the dance montage set to Hungry Eyes, things had already reached a boiling point. What happened in that moment was something Jennifer Grey kept to herself for years, something she didn't speak about until much later. And when she finally did, the reaction was explosive. What Grey concealed, the disgusting behavior. The Hungry Eyes montage in Dirty Dancing is widely remembered as a playful, sensual moment of blossoming romance. Set to Eric Carmen's catchy tune, it captures the spark between Baby and Johnny during dance rehearsals. The scene appears lighthearted and flirtatious on screen, filled with shy glances, teasing touches, and synchronized movement. But behind the camera, the reality was far more complicated. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze were barely holding it together at this point in filming. While audiences saw chemistry, what was really happening was emotional strain that had been simmering for weeks. Grey, already emotionally fragile from the long shoot and ongoing issues with her co-star, was pushed to her limit during this sequence. The scene called for repeated physical closeness and genuine romantic tension, something that became more and more difficult to fake. By now, Patrick Swayze grew increasingly frustrated with Grey's delays and hesitations. Every giggle, every miscue grated on him. According to reports from crew members, Swayze began snapping between takes. He muttered under his breath and rolled his eyes. His tone turned cold. At one point, he reportedly stormed off set and had to be talked into returning. Jennifer Grey, meanwhile, kept quiet. She sensed a growing disdain, especially during the scenes where their bodies had to be pressed close. She would later describe his gaze during these rehearsals as one of disgust, not affection. She felt it deeply, but at the time she chose to hide it, Speaking up might have jeopardized the movie, or worse, her career. The set was already tense due to the tight schedule and budget, and Gray feared being seen as difficult if she said anything. It wasn't until decades later, in a recent interview, that Jennifer Grey finally told her side. And it's bad. She described in detail how alienated and belittled she felt during these scenes. Her words were blunt and heartbreaking. He was so cold. He was disgusting. She recounted how the looks Patrick Swayze gave her, that were meant to be smoldering in the scene, were to her actually condescending and resentful. The emotional weight she carried in silence was buried beneath smiles and playful choreography. Fans never suspected a thing. The montage became one of the most memorable sequences in romantic movie history. It captured an emotional tension that seemed genuine, because it was, but not in the way viewers imagined. The emotional intensity you see in that scene wasn't the product of good acting alone. It was a complex blend of frustration, restraint, and buried resentment. Jennifer Grey was struggling to keep her composure, while Patrick Swayze wrestled with his own irritation. That friction, ironically, gave the scene its crackling edge. After this, the producers had to do something. There was concern that the animosity between the two stars would endanger the filming of the love scenes. To address this, writer Eleanor Bergstein and director Emile Ardolino forced Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze to re-watch their initial screen tests, the ones with the breathtaking chemistry. This had the desired effect, and the actors were able to return to the film with renewed energy and enthusiasm. After filming the big dance finale, which was a climactic lift scene, the film was ready for post-production and the theaters. But no one, not even producers, could have predicted what would happen next. When Dirty Dancing was finally released to public, the massive hit of the 80s. When Dirty Dancing hit theaters in August 1987, no one expected much. It was a low-budget film with no major stars and a simple story set in the early 1960s. But something about it struck a deep chord with audiences. Word of mouth spread fast. Within weeks, the movie became a box office sensation, eventually grossing over $214 million worldwide. What began as a quiet, modest release grew into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze were suddenly global icons. People fell in love with the story of Baby and Johnny, two mismatched lovers from different worlds brought together by dance. The soundtrack went multi-platinum, with songs like I've Had the Time of My Life becoming radio staples. The film won an Academy Award for Best Original Song and a Golden Globe, solidifying its status as a beloved hit. But while the public praised the electric chemistry between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze, the emotional truth behind their performances remained hidden. Grey later admitted that she had to process many complex feelings after the film's release. The experience of making Dirty Dancing, with all its personal discomfort, silent tensions, and private hurt, was hard to forget, and yet she also came to see how the very challenges she faced gave the film its rawness and honesty. The tension on screen wasn't just acting. It was real, and that's why people connected with it. Despite their difficult dynamic, both Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze acknowledged the magic they created together. Over time, the bitterness softened. They reunited in 2004 for a Dirty Dancing-themed documentary and were able to reflect on their shared history. Grey spoke with respect for Swayze's dedication and talent, while Swayze, before his passing in 2009, openly praised Grey's emotional vulnerability and growth as an actress. He even admitted that he might have been too hard on her during filming, hinting at quiet recognition of the tension they'd never fully discussed. The film's lasting success also shaped both of their careers in powerful ways. For Jennifer Grey, the role of Baby became a defining moment, though she continued to act in later years. She often spoke about how hard it was to break away from the image of the innocent girl in Dirty Dancing. Patrick Swayze, on the other hand, became a leading man in Hollywood, going on to star in hits like Ghost and Point Break. But no matter how far their careers took them, they were always remembered first and foremost as Baby and Johnny. Looking back, Dirty Dancing became more than just a movie. It was a moment in time, a story that captured the hearts of millions while quietly hiding the emotional price paid to create it. Still, long before the fame and the glowing reviews, this was a film riddled with tension, giggles, miscues, and frustrating rehearsals. One moment more than any other symbolized this mix of beauty and struggle. A failed screen test captured in a camera reel that nearly ruined everything before it began. Years later, director Emil Ardolino would thank his lucky stars for his decision to ignore that first screen test and move on to second, the one who convinced them all that Swayze and Gray could really bring the characters of Johnny and Baby to life. Dirty Dancing not only turned him into a legend in Hollywood, but also created a legacy that is still very much alive today, almost 40 years later. The legacy of Dirty Dancing. Jennifer Gray's reflection on Dirty Dancing in the years following its success has been one of grace and honesty. Despite the difficult moments during filming, Gray later found herself recognizing the value of what they had created together. After Swayze, she shared how important their reconciliation was, particularly in his final years. When Swayze was diagnosed with cancer, Gray reached out to him privately. She later expressed, "Patrick was a rare and beautiful person, complicated but kind." This sentiment speaks to the transformation of their relationship from one of tension to mutual respect and understanding, as they both realized how their past conflicts had given their on-screen partnership its authenticity. Patrick Swayze's passing in 2009 deeply affected Jennifer Gray, and in the years that followed, she became more open about the dynamics of their relationship during Dirty Dancing's production. Despite having called him disgusting in earlier interviews, when the wound was still somewhat open, she now speaks with deep respect and admiration for him, acknowledging that their volatile connection was part of what made their performances so believable. Dirty Dancing remains one of the most iconic and beloved films of all time. Its story of forbidden love and dance transcended its humble origins to become a cultural touchstone. Though the hidden tensions behind the scenes are now part of the film's history, those struggles ultimately contributed to the movie's unforgettable energy. Jennifer Gray's decision to keep the pain of their relationship under wraps allowed the film's raw emotion to shine through, creating a genuine connection with audiences. The legacy of Dirty Dancing proves that real emotion, whether it's pain, joy, or passion, can be woven into art in ways that make it unforgettable. What do you think about Dirty Dancing? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.